Cool to see what you're building. Probably a problem that I've experienced myself.
Like my last business was a very low margin, high volume business, and it's a similar sort of business model here.
As you scale, because this is global, like this is everywhere in the world, how would you scale the payment side of things?
Hi everyone, and welcome to Pitch for Investment Online. This is Othership's monthly pitch event where we're going to put 5 of our founders in front of our wonderful panel of investors. So our next pitch is Jamie from Squaddle. Squaddle is a WhatsApp application to help you organise sporting events easily and seamlessly through your communities and organisations.
So Squaddle is an app and WhatsApp bot that makes activities and events self-organizing. A bit about me, first of all. So I'm an experienced technology entrepreneur. My previous startup was sold in 2017, delivering a 5 times return for angels. And I'm joined at Squaddle with my co-founder, Pete, who leads on engineering, and Scott, who is our head of product. So we launched our public beta in late September after some initial private testing, and we now have just over 1,000 users, and just under £9,000 of gross merchandise value has passed through our platform. And for now, we're focused on modest growth, up to around 5,000 users within the first 12 months, as we focus on continuing to refine the product before we invest in marketing. Now, our users love Squaddle because it removes unnecessary noise from their group chats and allows them to pay seamlessly. And we eventually hope that Squaddle will have a wide range of applications beyond sport, but initially we're focusing carefully on addressing the use case of sport, and that's why I started Squaddle in the first place, because I was personally frustrated with how difficult it was to organise a football match in Hackney every week. And so Squaddle aims to solve the many problems that organisers face when they're doing that each week. And here are some screenshots of Facebook threads, WhatsApp threads, and email threads that get very messy, and important information is often missed and needs to be repeated. And typically payments are taken as a mixture of cash at the game or bank transfers with links posted in groups. And it's very hard to keep track of who's paid and how. And this usually leads to organisers being out of pocket. Most of our competitor solutions require players to install apps and go through a complex sign-up process. And none of them work within WhatsApp, which is where lots of people are organising their games. And this is the kind of feedback we're getting from our initial beta testers. We've really focused the user experience on simplicity, so we're really pleased to be receiving feedback like this. And in terms of how it actually works, admins or organisers sign up on the web, they get a link, share that with others in their squad, so for example, posting it into their existing WhatsApp group. Players then sign up very quickly, there's no need for a password, and they then receive invites via WhatsApp, or if they're not on WhatsApp, because we want to cater for all groups, even though that's our focus, and they can use email, and then they can easily pay with a couple of taps. And one of the main reasons we're doing this is we want to get people active again. So participation in team sports has declined since COVID and hasn't yet rebounded to previous levels. And we're really passionate about the physical and mental health benefits of team sport. So we'd really like to be part of helping to address that. We also think it's really important to address the problem of digital well-being, and my personal experience of organising games via social media is it's incredibly distracting, and you go in to do one thing and you find yourself down a rabbit hole 2 minutes later. So Squaddle is explicitly designed to reduce that distraction and save our organisers time. So as I say, we hope that Squaddle will eventually have lots of different applications, but initially the market sizing is looking at football, because that's the main use case we're tackling today. That's obviously a very large market, but of the millions of people who play each month, about 115,000 are kind of organisers, and that ranges from kind of recreational through to affiliated clubs. And so that's our kind of initial target market. And there's a very fragmented market. There's lots of apps out there that help people to organise sport, but most of them have not had much traction. There's a few that we are following closely. There's a couple of Scandinavian-based VC-backed companies. One's called Spond, the other one's called Heya. They've both got meaningful user numbers, but they're primarily focused on parents organising their kids and are more on the kind of proper sports club end of the market rather than the recreational side that we're initially targeting. Footy Addicts is an interesting kind of social network in large cities in the UK, which is closer to what we're trying to do. but there's various issues with their tech, and their business model relies on them actually organising the games themselves a lot of the time. Eventually, we may overlap with ticketing giants like Eventbrite if we're able to break into other markets beyond sport. So far in our financial model, we've explored a few different routes to monetization, but all of those so far are focusing on B2C, and I can share our financial model with any investors who want to look at what we've done so far on that. But since we've launched the beta, we've also had a lot of inbound interest from organizations. And so we're now thinking that actually the B2B route may be a more kind of reliable way to monetize earlier. And we're just in the process of having various interesting conversations on that front, which I can't yet share details of, but we're feeling very confident about that. This is briefly our roadmap, but I probably haven't got time to go into it in detail. We do eventually intend to develop native mobile applications, and that's one of the things that we'll work on when we've received the investment. And there's plenty more to discuss on the roadmap in questions if you want. In terms of the investment, we're raising up to 250,000 at a £1 million pre-money valuation. We've got about 115,000 of that already secured, and it should be SEIS compatible, but we have 95,000 left of SEIS, and that will be distributed pro rata to investors, and the rest of it will be EIS. And we have a full investment memo and financial model available if you want it. Thanks very much for your time.
Hi Jamie, great pitch, nice, and I like the deck, nice and succinct, tells the story very well. I don't think that any investors can be, in any confusion about how you're doing how it's set up, what it's going to do. I think that the business model for me is still something, obviously, I think you're still working it out yourself, right? And so I was going to say that, as people can be a bit fussy about paying for stuff if it's just organizing a game, and if people have to on the B2C model, it might I guess get people's goat a little bit, and they might just go back to doing it as they were. So I like the thought of it becoming B2B. What kind of businesses are you talking to? I know you can't go into too much detail. Are they your typical kind of beer brands, things like that, people that want to sponsor these kind of areas, or what kind of people are you talking to?
No, the sponsorship angle is one that's interesting in terms of, you could, for example, offer footballs to people playing sport and have a route to kind of affiliate purchases. That's one thing that we haven't properly kind of explored, but that is an interesting angle, the sponsorship angle. But no, the kind of conversations we're having is kind of people who are organising events already and can't do it via WhatsApp, and can suddenly see that this makes it really easy to do it on WhatsApp. And they kind of just they don't want it to be called Squaddle, they want it to be branded whatever their existing organisation is. So there's some club night.
I get you.
One of the people we're talking to is organises club nights. Another actually organises, have you heard of social prescribing? It's basically where the NHS or your doctor prescribes, rather than antidepressants, they'll prescribe that you go out into nature and have a group meditation. And there's an organisation we're talking to who's interested in using it to organise that kind of event, basically taking people out into woods and connecting them with nature. And currently they do it on WhatsApp, but it's actually quite bad because they share contact details between the patients, because everybody can see everybody else's number.
Sure.
Squaddle essentially anonymizes that, as well as making it unambiguous who's actually attending.
Okay, that was that's what I wanted to delve into a little bit. Nothing else. I mean, it's the valuation seems solid. The amount that you're raising, would you overfund at all?
Not at that valuation, no.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Okay, that's all from me.
Hey Jamie, hey. Yeah, likewise, also really enjoyed the pitch, so thanks for coming along tonight. Cool to see what you're building, probably a problem that I've experienced myself as well. Had a few questions, I'll try and run through them quickly, because I know that I want to leave some time for Ahmad as well. So you mentioned there are about 115,000 like organizers of sports matches like this. Do you have any idea of like what the customer value would be, just to get an indication of like what the market size is here? Because that was something that I had a concern with when you're going for your pitch.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's really hard to quantify because we're building a tool that we hope will have kind of ubiquitous value in a lot of different areas. And for example, we hope it will be really useful for proper affiliated sports clubs who are, they're incorporated as an entity, they have like annual accounts and everything, all the way through to like people who are just like playing with a bunch of mates and have a WhatsApp group. Yeah. And so and that 115,000 organizers kind of broadly, as far as you can get any data on it, includes both of those user types. But that's only through what's available publicly in terms of research by the FA into how many people play football. So I wish we had better data on that. I mean, in terms of like how we're looking at it, and from my personal experience being an organizer, basically if Squaddle can demonstrate that you lose less money because you're using Squaddle and it helps you keep track of payment properly, and you kind of can see that you haven't lost 50 quid that like block booking, then we hope to basically take a percentage of that 50 quid to, when we can really demonstrate that value. But it's quite hard to put it in terms of individual customer lifetime value, because there's also different types of users, right? So you've got your like organizer who's going to hopefully give you some of that 50 quid, and you've also got your participants who are going to pay like a small service fee when they pay, and like, so different users will have different values. But we know we need to do work on that, and before we raise further funds to fund our customer acquisition, we would certainly intend to properly bottom that out.
Okay. And if 115,000, I know it's a difficult number to understand whether that's correct or not, but if that is a rough indication of like organizers of football games in the UK, if you wanted to, like, at some point you probably will have to find other use cases, because it's not a huge market, although I do think it's a great application for the product. What other use cases have you been thinking about in terms of like what's next on your roadmap?
Well, as I mentioned to the previous question, the B2B use case is opening up, and like the inbound interest we're getting there is opening up a load of different use cases that we hadn't actually sort of thought about properly before we launched the beta. But we already have, different sports using it. So like a basketball group's using it, rowing clubs using it, badminton using it. So basically all of the other sports is the kind of like obvious next place to look. And then, we've got like one group using it for poker nights. It's basically like anything where you need a specific number of people is the obvious use case. And you need it to be unambiguous who's coming, and it's currently done on WhatsApp like that. I know that's a slightly, rough answer, but I'm sort of confident that there's a big enough market out there.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And you mentioned in your slides a bit about your competitors. What are you doing which makes Squaddle better at organizing like sport events rather than just like general meetups, which is what I think most of the other competitors are doing? They're much more general.
Well, I mean, so it's hard to restrict the number of competitors to like events organizing in general, because you've got like Eventbrite, you've got Meetup, there's loads of like Facebook events. There's a lot of like generic events organizing tools out there, which we would sort of broadly put ourselves in the same category as. But in terms of the competitors on that slide, they're all sports focused, apart from Eventbrite, obviously. So Haya and Spond are the two Scandinavian companies, and they've got a lot of the functionality that we've got, but they don't have a WhatsApp integration, and they're typically more focused on like affiliated sports clubs and particularly parents organising their kids. We're quite excited about the kind of social network angle of Squaddle and want to develop features such as promoting your game to another nearby squad, so you can very easily fill a spot that would otherwise mean your game's cancelled. And that's a good example of how we intend to save money for organisers who'd have to otherwise cough up for the entire game, even if it's cancelled, kind of thing.
Awesome. Okay, wicked. Yeah, thanks for that. Really interesting. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is something that, as Sam said, everyone that plays, at least let's say recreational football in a league or with friends, etc., struggles with, and it's always something that we've always said, I wish there was something to solve that, because it's a headache. But I've got a few questions because I think there's a few areas that I wanted to kind of chat with you about. One, can you tell us a little bit more about traction and users and stuff like that? I didn't see that on the slide, and I don't think it was mentioned in the Q&A. Can you talk us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we went public at the end of September, and we haven't invested anything in marketing yet because we feel like it's too early. We don't want to, promote an immature product. So we're still very much gathering feedback and responding to that feedback. We've got about 1,000 users so far. And of those, and lots of those are using the platform to pay. And so we've generated about just under £9,000 of gross merchandise value. So we're not charging for the service, but that's flowing through our accounts. In terms of what happens next, obviously we want to grow, but we don't want to grow too quickly because, well, I don't want to, as I say, have an immature product being promoted, but we're hoping to grow to about 5,000 users within 12 months, and we feel like that's manageable with a very early stage, obviously, and very small team. So we don't want to get overwhelmed by feedback or piss our users off by, promoting something that's not quite ready yet, type of thing.
And is it just purely focus on two things: help organize who's in, who's out for the game, and collect payments? Is that kind of the two main things that you focus on?
Broadly, yeah, you can say. I mean, the fact that games can repeat and then you don't have to send out invites yourself is another important thing that we've worked on in the private beta testing phase. But yeah, the simplicity is important, and you've nailed it in terms of what our proposition is. Okay.
And the use of funds that you mentioned for the raise is basically to continue building the product and investing in marketing and expanding the product, etc., right?
Yeah, not really investing in marketing. Got a small marketing budget of about £1,000 a month in there, but primarily it's paying our team. So I'm not taking a salary yet, but our lead software engineer Pete, and our head of product Scott are taking salaries, and we want to hire another software engineer. So our burn rate will be about £15,000 a month after that.
Okay.
And depending on what happens over those 6 to 12 months, that should last. We might raise earlier. It depends how it goes, really.
Another thing I wanted to ask is payments. As you scale, because this is global, this is everywhere in the world, how would you scale the payment side of things?
It's a good question. So currently we use Stripe. I'm interested in open banking infrastructure. Don't know if you know much about that, but that for me is the obvious next place to go for payments, to do kind of intra-bank bank account transfers. I haven't looked at the technical feasibility of that yet, though, so it could be much harder than it seems. But yeah, it's the merchant fees, like my last business was a very low margin, high volume business, and it's a similar sort of business model here. So yeah, the merchant fees, what Stripe charges is going to be quite crucial to the margin. So I would love to, I mean, you've got Adyen and the bigger merchant payment providers would probably enable at scale to cut those margins, but the open banking stuff might be even better than that.
One last thing I'll say before Ben, I know I took too much time, is some organizers you pay in advance. So I'll pay $2,000 and then ask for everyone to pay me back and follow up and follow up and follow up. So being able to split payments and then either automatically direct them to me and then I pay, or we all combine payments and pay the provider, and that's where maybe a partnership can happen. So maybe that's something worth looking into. Or if it's pay per game, where it's £6 a game and collect, pay. There's two sides of it, I guess.
That's exactly. I mean, it's really good to be having this part of the conversation, because this is the bit I'm most interested in, is the different ways you can look at the group payment dynamics. And like you say, lots of people pay in advance, or the organizer has to take a level of financial risk. We think there's some really interesting stuff around that in terms of how the groups all kind of work together. But yeah, currently the model is, as you just described, the organizer sets an amount per game, and then there's a balance and they can withdraw that. whenever they want, basically. But in future, we'd like to make it so that you can do it in different ways, like you just said.
Last thing I'd add, food for thought, think of how you can add sponsors into this, because a lot of teams that play in leagues, like recreational leagues, sometimes look for sponsors to cover their shirts and jerseys and fees. And maybe this could be a platform for sponsors to find places where they can plug themselves in. That could be something interesting. Yeah, sure. Very interesting. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
And thank you so much, everybody, for watching. This has been Pitch for Investment Online by Othership. If you want to find links to our other events or some of our previous videos, you can find them in the description, along with links to Othership's workspace solutions, flexible working software, events, and online community. Thank you so much for joining.